This video was partly made possible thanks to my lovely patrons. Well, it's that time again. Yes, I know it's like February already, I got a little busy at the beginning there. Yes, I know it's like March already, I got a little busy at the beginning there. Last year I made a video where I did quick-fire short reviews of every single game I beat in 2022. And you know, it wasn't my best performing video, and I wasn't able to put out a lot in 2023 either, but I do still really enjoy talking about all the games I've played, from the big releases to random indie picks, so let's do this once again. If you've seen last year's video, you know the drill. This includes not just 2023 releases, but also older games I've replayed or played for the first time. And before we start, let's get the honorable mentions out of the way, including games that technically can't be completed or updates to games I covered last year. A demo for Bits and Bobs, a Riven Heaven inspired indie game released, and out of all the others I've seen and played, this seems to be one of the most faithful to its inspiration, and I can't wait to see more. I finally got every colored coin and unlocked every character in Super Mario Run, so I guess I can put this here. I mean, it's still a neat, unique spin on a Mario game, the mobile market just didn't give it a fair chance. Also, that Mario Wonder reskin event was very funny to see. Power Wash Simulator has received bonkers third-party DLC, from Final Fantasy VII to SpongeBob SquarePants and Back to the Future. This is a perfect idea for crossovers and I absolutely need to see more. Also, they did answer my prayers and made a VR version, which is super cool. Now, if only this released on PC. Jellycar Worlds got updated with the final 2 story worlds and now has all the courses from every previous game in the series, which is both a nostalgia and preservation win. I will always continue to show Jellycar. I got 1 watermelon in Suika game, which means I never have to touch it again. I forgot to mention it last year, but the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass DLC for the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe game released on the Nintendo Switch family of systems. The Booster Course Pass definitely got off to a slightly rough start, but in the end I think it had a great selection of almost all the fan favorites, 3DS Rainbow Road my beloved, with an extra sprinkle of new characters, finally letting Kamek have his well-deserved appearance in a console Mario Kart, and the overall value it adds is clear to see. How this will affect Mario Kart 9 is probably a discussion best saved for another time. And finally, everybody want to Switch. Look, this game's already at bargain bin prices, and it has a few decent party game ideas, though of course a few are so stupid they loop back around to being hilarious. Nintendo wants you to play this with your friends in person, but if you can get an online thing going on Discord, it's at least worth 1 or 2 nights of laughs. Or you can just check out the videos of me playing it with my Discord server.
Not one.
Yellow.
88.
Oh my god, that robot! The Revan Tengoku! Alright, with all that out of the way, last year I took a look at a whopping 43 games. This year I don't have as many, but only by a little bit. We still have 34 whole games to get through. So without further ado, here's every game I've beaten in 2023. Okay, but did I really beat Return of the Obra Dinn? I mean, sure, I boarded this ghost ship, found out how almost everyone on it died by revisiting their moment of death with a magic pocket watch, then I tried my best to fill in everyone's fates in this magic book and could then leave at any time, ending the game. The thing is, deducing everyone's identity from just their pixelated mugshots and contextless dialogue is a tough-as-nails challenge, requiring textbook knowledge of all the crew's roles and near photographic memory of all their interactions. It is a true detective game, and I can't fault it for being very good at being one, but my brain is definitely way too small for this. As of this video, I've only solved 24 out of the 58 fates. But if you think you're up to the task, feel free to come on board and try cracking the case. I first saw Salamander County Public Television at 2023's Awesome Games Done Quick event. Without context, it began with the runner trying to hit an orange as far as possible by controlling a banana. And then I wishlisted it, and then a friend gifted me the game as a joke, and here we are. So, in this game you're doing random tasks for TV station programming, serving a county whose population has mysteriously vanished. Yes, there is a story here told with this not Slack client and text-to-speech, and it's just as absurd as the task you'll be doing. The games themselves are basically simple stock image minigames where you go for high scores and bonus objectives, such as erasing a whiteboard with tank controls, driving a car with mushroom wheels, and fish volleyball. Your enjoyment depends entirely on whether or not you find this absurd humor interesting at all, but it did make me and my friends laugh, so take from that what you will. Also, I unintentionally got first place on the global leaderboards for one of the games one time, and I eventually also managed to somehow wreck that orange banana minigame. Last year, I started my trek through the Monkey Island series, so let's finish things up. Tales of Monkey Island is brought to us by a pre-Walking Dead Telltale Games, and is a pretty good post-Ron Gilbert entry in the series. The series has mostly held up really decently, even if it couldn't reach its old peaks, and nothing in this entry stood out to me as a low point at all. Unlike Curse and Escape though, this is definitely trying to be more serious in tone while still keeping the typical Monkey Island charm. Like, not to spoil any details, but multiple characters die on and off screen in this one, and it caught me off guard at points. In general though, this is definitely one of the most polished entries in the series, especially coming in from Escape. Unfortunately, while the endgame raises some questions regarding the overall lore of the series, they'll sadly go unanswered because Ron Gilbert is back in the director's chair, bringing us Return to Monkey Island, as of now the latest standalone game in the series. And it returns to the series' roots, finally going back to good old point and clicking. I actually don't mind the art style shift at all, and in fact I think this entry is animated quite well for a return to 2D. The writing remains as delightful as ever, and I also appreciate that even though this technically continues from Monkey Island 2, Ron Gilbert also throws in nods and characters from the games he didn't have a hand in rather than retconning them, so that's always good to see. That said, Ron Gilbert gonna Ron Gilbert, and the ending is certainly a Monkey Island ending, I'll give it that. Some people despise it, but I did kinda enjoy the nature of it and what it represents, to put it vaguely. I don't know where the series will go from here, or if it will at all, but I'm now joining the club of people hoping for more Monkey Island material in the future. And after I wrote this portion of the script, a Sea of Thieves crossover with Monkey Island happened. I haven't gotten around to checking it out yet, but as of February, I've been giving the basics of Sea of Thieves a few tries just to get familiar with everything for this DLC campaign. So perhaps I'll report back next year on how it is. Look, I know not everyone can properly see magic eye pictures, but I swear I'm not going insane. This is an actual video game, and while the core gimmick is bananas and a complete novelty, it's just bonkers to actually see a Celeste-style platformer that can only be played through Magic Eye. It's 1 hour of free eye strain, intriguing 2.5D platforming that I definitely recommend those with the ability to check it out. Game Boy and Game Boy Advance dropped on NSO, so that's right, it's time for some quick replays. This is a pretty obvious statement for the first game in the series, but Mega Microgames is WarioWare in its barest essence. Even without the controller gimmicks in later games, with just a D-pad and the A button as the control scheme, there's already 213 microgames worth of wacky ideas here, and the simplicity makes them still fun to get into to this day. I will still specifically call out the 4 microgames that are the same stop the meter at red game though. It's definitely on the easy side compared to later entries, but WarioWare Mega Microgames defined a critically acclaimed formula that I'm surprised more developers aren't copying. Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins is generally considered to be the superior Mario platformer on the Game Boy, and I'd have to agree. The first one is probably more quirky in terms of its settings and mechanics, but you can't fault the sequel for attempting a more traditional experience on the Game Boy. That doesn't mean it isn't unique, however. This is one of the few 2D Mario games that have free reign over its level themes, and the creativity absolutely shines. Revisiting all these locations like Macro Zone, Mario Zone, and Space Zone have been a blast. And come on, this game literally blessed our universe with the creation of Wario. This type of uniqueness is something the new Soup series sorely lacked, and I'm hoping we'll get to see more Mario games with bonkers locations and premises. Mario Wonder is a great step in that direction, but shh, we're not there yet, we'll get there in due time. In Pupperazzi, you literally play as photo mode and take photos of dogs. That's the plot. The Pokemon Snap inspiration is rampant here, though honestly this is an even chiller game than that, with you just casually walking around areas with no time limits doing photo-taking missions at your own pace. It soon becomes apparent that the dog breeds and cosmetics you find in a level are usually just randomly determined, but it's still fun to see what the game comes up with that make for wacky photo situations. It might be shorter than Pokemon Snap, but dude, if you love dogs, this game's got you covered. I I didn't actually play Kirby's Return to Dreamland on release day. That honor went to Triple Deluxe instead. And I didn't actually play Return to Dreamland until 2021. Despite that, going into the Switch remaster, it never felt repetitive to replay this so soon. The main game mode is as good as it was before, and I suspect a lot of people would prefer it over Star Ally's more multiplayer-centric level design, objective improvements like the frame rate aside. And HAL absolutely did not skimp on the deluxe part. Seeing all the returning minigames for Merry Magoland is a treat, even though it's a giant missed opportunity for online multiplayer, and the extra Magalore Epilogue campaign is also a fun but not too alienating twist on the typical Kirby formula. A fantastic re-release overall. Now let's hope they remaster the 3DS games next. Mario Super Picross sent me on the downward spiral, so here's Picross S. And yes, I finished all 300 puzzles in it. Seeing that it's literally just Picross, there's probably not much I can say, but this is my first time checking out the rest of the non-Mario Picross games by Jupiter, and the accessibility and quality of life features they've added to the new games are so good that they're starting to spoil me a little. Even so, the new modes like Mega Picross are still brain rackers, so the challenge level is just about perfect for me. It's still Picross as addictive as ever. Will I eventually end up finishing all, Jesus Christ, 9 entries on the Switch? We shall see. Kirby's Dream Land 2 is hecking unfair. On its surface, this seems to be just a standard Game Boy sequel with the copy abilities added in, and I do agree that the Animal Friends are a fun way to add variety to the ability pool. It seems like a very straightforward Kirby game to play through just like the previous games. But once you try to go for 100% completion by collecting everything, the madness of the level design starts to rear its head. With awkward enemy placements, lots of trial and error, and probably some of the most scripted puzzles in the franchise. It's basically my issues with Kirby 64 taken to another level. And going back to the crunched Game Boy screen after the NES doesn't help alleviate those problems at all. It's a fine run-of-the-mill Kirby platformer otherwise, but dang, I'm very glad the NSO emulator lets you rewind on this one. The 3DS eShop shut down on March 2023, so before that happened, I figured to myself, you know what, I should finish Rusty's Real Deal Baseball the legitimate way. This little collection of baseball minigames popped into the eShop back in 2014, and is notable for being one of the first free-to-start Nintendo games, and experimenting with a new monetization strategy on its own, where you get to haggle with the store owner Rusty to lower the real-world prices of the minigames you purchase separately. It's basically a glorified way of sprinkling visual novel elements in between the minigames, but hey, it works. The last time I played this game, I bought like 2 of the 10 minigames before putting it down. But in hindsight, it seemed the only games I bought were the least interesting ones. I mean, woo, press A to hit the ball at the right time. It's fine on its own, but Rusty's Real Deal Baseball really starts to shine when you look at the variety of the complete package. From using the gyroscope to aim shots or balance a ball on a bat, to learning how to call or catch different shots with help from the 3D effects. And even the one where you carve your own bat is sorta fun. This is the most polished baseball game Nintendo's made in a while that's also not a full-on baseball game, which is kinda funny to think about. Sonic has passed. I mean, I haven't experienced a lot of Sonic games and media featuring the extended cast for myself, but I think I've gotten familiar enough with them in passing. And this is a freebie, so I was totally down to check out The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. And yeah, it's a cute little visual novel with a great art style and some references that even I could get a kick out of. I love the blatant Ace Attorney callbacks as a fan of that series, even if the actual puzzle solving was on the light side, and the ring collecting minigame feels more like an afterthought. But hey, it's still a neat, free experience, I'm not complaining. Yep, I've never played the Subspace Emissary. 9-year-old me had a Wii when Super Smash Bros. Brawl came out, and I remember hearing about it, being exposed to the concept of Smash Bros. For the first time. But my parents wouldn't buy me the game under the reason that it was too violent. So Smash 3DS became the first game in the series I was actually sucked into the hype cycle of. Still, I've always found the Subspace Emissary fascinating after seeing snippets of it on the internet for as long as I can remember. And now that I've played it, yeah, this is definitely the best single-player Smash Bros. Mode by far. It's quite similar to Melee's Adventure Mode, just with added exploration. And while it's undoubtedly a great addition to the formula, with Brawl also being the slowest game in the series and one that I'm less adjusted to, I would have loved if this had speedier movement. I suppose the sticker effects could remedy that, but I'll be honest, I barely experimented with them at all. Still, the cutscenes are a treat to properly watch with context for the first time. Rob lore makes me cry every time. Xenoblade Chronicles Free Future redeemed this more Xenoblade Chronicles Free, and that's good. These expansion stories have always tried to improve upon the base gameplay, and this certainly does so too, because I'm kinda glad it got rid of the class-based leveling system. And yes, I did try to complete almost everything in here again. The exploration and quests are still as fun as ever. Otherwise, this thing is just a giant love letter to fans of the first two games. I'm not going to spoil too much, but while I feel this is more of a contrived setup for a prequel compared to the gut punch that is torn at the Golden Country, getting to revisit elements from the first two games is such a joy. And the way the whole thing wraps up definitely puts me on the edge of my seat regarding the future of the Xenoblade series. Dear Lord, what is Monolith Soft cooking up next? I haven't actually played a whole lot of 2D Zelda games. I've beaten The Link Between Worlds and Four Swords Adventures and they're both great, and I did get halfway through A Link to the Past. I honestly forgot why I dropped off it. But I've been itching to give more 2D Zelda a try, and Link's Awakening seemed to be a good place to continue, seeing as it's a Game Boy game and shouldn't take too long to finish. So good thing the Switch remake exists. First of all, this game looks gorgeous. The inconsistent frame rate is a bummer, but it didn't really sour my enjoyment overall. If they could do a similar art style for, say, a remake of The Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls, that would be kinda neat to see. You're paying attention, right, Nintendo? But yeah, this is just a chill, Zelda-less Zelda experience with the wackiest Nintendo cameos. It's definitely not the most challenging game in the series, but I had fun just exploring the world and fully completing everything. Even already knowing how the game ends didn't spoil the experience. Oh yeah, they did also add that dungeon maker into the remake. It certainly exists. Really hoped you wouldn't have to trudge through it for the last heart piece, but hey, joke's on me for being the semi-completionist. Picross S2. It's more Picross. Well, okay, the one new type of Picross they added here is Clip Picross, where you solve a whole bunch of differently shaped Picross puzzles that eventually form a larger piece that ties into a story, which is a neat idea. It was fun seeing some super wide or thin puzzles. But yeah, other than that, it's just more Picross. 2 games down, 7 more to go. Maybe. Like DuckTales Remastered from last year, which I gained interest in as a faithful reimagining of a landmark NES game, Castle of Illusion is something I was interested in as a faithful reimagining of a landmark Genesis game. Well, this may be more of an average platformer today, but it still has some neat level design that's not entirely a walk in the park. Compared to the original, this one definitely has more of that modern Disney whimsy injected into it, but I'd argue it's a good choice for a Mickey Mouse game. And the new additions like the 3D segments also work surprisingly well. Disney has not always had a good track record with their games in the modern era, with most of them being mediocre licensed titles, but this is definitely one of their more polished endeavors. The new Metroidvania-style Illusion Island is something I might have to look into trying after this one. What do you mean they took 10 years to try another one of these? Just Shapes and Beats has a pretty simple premise. There's not much to say other than you dodge shapes while grooving to some really banger beats. How said shapes are arranged is where the creativity shines though, with lots of wacky patterns to learn and dodge. Each level is short and sweet, and there's a decent difficulty curve with lenient movement options without being bullet hell levels of hard. And I also really enjoyed the minimalistic presentation that wraps all this up into a challenging but fun package. Definitely gonna revisit this one on occasion just to boot up the randomized playlist. Super Mario Advance 4 Super Mario Bros. 3 is first of all a mouthful, but it is a respectable version of Mario 3. And I'd say unlike most other Mario Advance games, barely compromises anything in the transition to GBA. The base game is as playable as ever, just now with some additional options for replaying levels, but what I was most excited to check out are the e-reader levels that are included with the Wii U and NSO releases. And yeah, there are brand new levels in the Mario 3 style, sometimes even mixed with elements from Mario 2 and Mario World. It makes for a pretty surreal experience seeing as this predates New Super Mario Bros., and makes me imagine an alternate future where they iterated on this formula to make a new sprite-based 2D Mario in the style of Sonic Mania. You could argue that's what Mario Maker essentially is, but yeah, imagine that but as a full game with as many gimmicks as Mario Wonder. There I go mentioning Wonder again, I said we'll get to it. Well, ain't this game gonna be another polarizing entry that people will find overrated in a few years? Look, I really liked Breath of the Wild, and I was very much looking forward to the expansion of the world with Tears of the Kingdom. And between the folks who liked the new stuff they added, and the folks who hated the reuse of the same Hyrule, I'm mostly in the former camp. It had been 6 years since Breath of the Wild, so I never felt traversing the overworld to be overly boring, and I was mostly interested in seeing what has changed in any major places I remembered. The Sky Islands, while not necessarily adding a lot of new land to explore, did speed up my traversal through the map this time around, and it really feels like this was geared towards people who've already played Breath of the Wild in that aspect. If you didn't like the gameplay loop previously, you wouldn't like it here, but I did, and completing all the shrines and side quests was still as fun as ever, and so are the new mechanics. I never went super crazy with Ultra Hand like other players, but I always appreciate it for giving us airbike supremacy. This may not have been as mind-blowing as experiencing Breath of the Wild for the first time, but dang is it a great excuse to re-explore Hyrule with a glitched, unbreakable Master Sword. Look, I somehow also decided to find all the Koroks this time. I think I deserve this one. Learn with Pokémon Typing Adventure is the only DS game to use the Nintendo wireless keyboard. Yep, I got the whole set right here. It's a funny DS accessory, of course I had to get it. This is basically a Typing of the Dead style game, but instead of fighting zombies, you're typing Pokemon names to catch them. The game sort of uses a similar formula as Pokemon Snap, where you can revisit these on-rails courses as many times as you like to catch certain Pokemon and fulfill new objectives on each visit. And yeah, it's a perfectly competent typing game all things considered. The Japanese version will probably be a lot harder if you're not familiar with Japanese Pokemon names, but if you're stuck with it like I am and want to play the game in English, you can actually Oh man, Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, what a game. This is technically a replay for me, because I recall playing it on the DS a long time ago, right after I started getting into Ace Attorney and wanted to check out this adjacent game. But back then my brain was too small for the puzzles, I'm pretty sure I just consulted a guide. And I've also since forgotten about 80% of the story beats, so jumping back in on the Switch was almost like getting to play it for the first time again. And it's so good. You play as a recently deceased spirit trying to solve the mysteries of your own death by manipulating objects, and maybe save a few lives and unravel some conspiracies along the way. That's all I'll say because this game has an incredible mystery story, with the sort of memorable characters and scenarios you'd expect from the OG director of Ace Attorney, and has a great presentation with both pre-rendered DS sprites and an HD. Like if you're an Ace Attorney fan and haven't played Ghost Trick yet, what's wrong with you? This year I started tinkering with some handheld modding and ended up with this cool looking transparent Game Boy Color with a larger IPS screen. And I even picked up an EverDrive to go with it. Okay, ignore those things in the corner there for now, but just to put this revitalized Game Boy Color through its paces, here's Super Mario Land, the 30-minute launch title for the Game Boy, now in color. This DX hack also has an option to modernize the sprites so that it looks a little closer to its sequel, but I do still like the charm of the old sprites and those still look great colorized. Otherwise, that's Mario Land 1. It's a super short game, but I still appreciate its impressiveness for a Game Boy launch title, and for bringing in some wackiness to the Mario series so early in its life. Why isn't this game still on Switch Online yet anyway? Don't ask why I suddenly came across this game, just pretend I'm deliberately throwing an unexpected curveball at you with Kaichu, the Kaiju dating sim. Hey, the topic was every game I beat in 2023. You play as Pikachu and you go on an around-the-world date with a kaiju of your choosing by being quizzed on their personality and preferences. I'm sure the world will be fine after this. The storyline is fairly predictable and you can finish one playthrough in 30 minutes, so I naturally did a run for every kaiju. But hey, the main draw for getting this game is if you enjoy the art and character design and want to see big creatures find love and kiss. It's that simple. Yeah, I've played every single Paper Mario game, but the Mario & Luigi series I actually haven't touched a lot of. My first experience with the series was Dream Team, which was honestly a perfect entry for a newcomer. And then I played Paper Jam, which I didn't find offensive at the time, but now I've forgotten almost everything about it. I briefly tried out Superstar Saga on an emulator and also have the 3DS remake of Bowser's Inside Story, but both of those games I never finished because I got occupied with Switch releases. So now is a chance to maybe properly start at the beginning again. And for the first installment of a Mario RPG series, Superstar Saga does a good job at laying the groundwork while still having fun characters and scenarios. I don't think it's quite on par with Paper Mario 64 personally. The battle system here is quite fast-paced and definitely took some time to get used to, especially since I'm more adjusted to the slower pace of the newer games and the command timing of the Paper Mario games, but some folks may prefer this challenge. I kinda broke the game in half with mushroom strats near the end, but overall, it's still a quirky, fun time. In 2023, I got my hands on a whole lot of non-Nintendo hardware, including a Sega Dreamcast. And of course, one of the first big games I had to play on it was obviously Mario 64, Sonic Adventure. I've previously played through the 2D games like Mania and Origins, but haven't really played a lot of the 3D entries, and Adventure 1 seemed like the best starting point. And honestly, it ain't bad. Yes, everyone says Sonic had a rough transition to 3D, but I feel most of that roughness lies in the presentation. The graphics were only impressive compared to the competition for a brief moment, and the voice acting is whack, both issues that you could say have worsened with age, but the gameplay still laid a decent foundation for what a 3D Sonic game should feel like, and I can totally see why everyone is clamoring for a return to the adventure formula for the series. It's still very jank, don't get me wrong, but it's the same way Mario 64 is very jank. Most people just learn to live with it or embrace it, and it didn't really get in the way of the experience most of the time. Even the infamous parts like Big's fishing campaign weren't as frustrating as the internet has led me to believe, except for like one specific occasion. So yeah, Sonic's first full 3D outing is actually pretty decent. The world just hasn't compared it favorably to the competition since. Continuing on to a Nintendo franchise that I really should have tried by now, this is Densetsu no Stafy, the first installment of the legendary Stafy series. Hey, don't blame me, the first 4 games in the series were all Japan exclusive, and a fan translation for the first game only finished in 2023, so that's what I'm taking a look at. A lot of people seem to think the Stafy series is just Kirby but underwater, which it sort of is, but also not quite. It's a mostly cozy linear adventure where you have free movement underwater, echo the dolphin style, and on your adventure you of course meet a lot of wacky characters. But what surprised me is after you make your way to the end and roll the credits, the game's not actually over. You revisit the same levels Metroidvania style, finding different paths to collectibles and refighting harder bosses instead of just reaching the end goal, which is a neat change of pace and an actually unique formula for a 2D action game. I really want to try out the rest of the games before jumping straight into the localized DS entry, but the fan translation of the first game already took fans more than 10 years of effort. Nintendo, please make a remastered compilation. Bring my boy Stafy back. Okay, how do I do this without getting demonetized? Grand Theft Auto 5. Can you believe beating a GTA game is even possible? My previous experience with the series was briefly playing San Andreas and GTA 4, with San Andreas in particular being the one that I played when I was young and I really shouldn't have been playing it at that age, but whatever, I still have fun blowing things up kind of game. So yeah, jumping straight to GTA 5 on the new PC running everything silky smooth at 1440p and actually doing the missions this time, it's easy to see how this game has held up and been milked by Rockstar for more than 10 years. It's just an incredibly solid open world game with some great quality of life improvements upon its predecessors. Everyone's sick and tired of GTA 5 at this point, but I was late to the party so I get to play it from beginning to end and immediately have GTA 6 announced right after. Funny how things work out. Detective Pikachu Returns is the Switch Pokémon game of all time. This is the weirdest development cycle for a series I've ever seen. The original 3DS game got teased in the form of a creepy Pikachu tech demo in 2013. 3 years later, what was basically part 1 was released as a Japanese eShop exclusive, and a live-action movie based on it was announced even though the game was incomplete. It finally got a full retail release in 2018 but ends with a cliffhanger sequel tease. Meanwhile, the movie released the next year told a full story that concludes an unresolved plot point in the games. Then they announced a sequel game for the Switch that same year, and then it spends 4 years in seemingly development hell to finally release in 2023 a generation behind, and the final results are still just mid. You can tell this game was originally planned as a 3DS game but forced to be blown up on a Switch in HD with barely passable presentation. Every area in the game goes through the same beats. You go to a new area, gather clues, answer simple logic questions, get some help from a Pokemon to reach the end of the area, Pikachu has a eureka moment, go to the next area, repeat. It's baby's second detective game, but the reason I really played it is just to see how it would deal with the first game's unresolved plot after the movie seemed to basically spoil how it ends. While it does retain most of the narrative beats, it does at least make a few unique additions that are mostly plot filler. At its best, it's an interactive Saturday morning Pokemon cartoon that's probably nowhere near the anime on a narrative level, and at worst it's an incredibly mediocre detective game that seems to really underestimate your intelligence. The one saving grace is that I played it in a Discord call with some friends who were Pokemon fans, and we enjoyed pointing at all the Pokemon cameos and riffing on the ironically hilarious parts as it went on. I wish I recorded some of those sessions, because those memories of us just completely losing it at the stuff that happens in this game are basically what I'm gonna associate with it from here on out. 2D Mario needed this W. I, like many others, found Super Mario Bros. Wonder a refreshing breath of fresh air after the new Soup series, but I think that general comparison has already been done to death. Let's just go straight to talking about the elephant in the room, which is the Wonder effects are exactly what I wanted to see in a new 2D Mario, especially after I've echoed some similar sentiments in the video where I ranked every unique gimmick in New Super Mario Bros. DS. All of them are incredibly creative and make for fun level designs, but I can also understand some complaints about said creativity backfiring in a weird way. Mario games have always done the thing where they introduce a level idea or a gimmick, iterate on it bit by bit as a challenge, then toss it away and move on to the next shiny idea. A lot of game analysis videos have covered this and a lot of Mario games do this, but Wonder cranks this up to 11. There are a ton of different level gimmicks in this game, and they're all good fun, but on occasion it does feel like they're not given enough room to breathe and be iterated upon. This can be both a good and bad thing since it keeps things very fresh, but also leads to missed opportunities to elaborate on certain challenges or even leave room for legacy ideas. Like, it's weird that there's only one full underwater level in the game and some classic Mario enemies only appear in like 1 or 2 levels max. The pool of fun gimmicks is wide, but the depth is relatively shallow. But perhaps this is a deliberate attempt to shift away from the design principles of the new Soup series. In a similar way, Wonder does seem to de-emphasize precise platforming like in New Soup in favor of general mastery of these level gimmicks, which provides a different sense of challenge altogether. Though the new core mechanics like badges and the new power-ups are solid additions, and the online implementation is actually a really cool way of doing it, you guys are just mean. Don't get me wrong, Mario Wonder is still one of the best 2D platformers I've played in some time. The only objectively bad parts are the boss fights, which they probably ran out of budget for. But like Mario Odyssey, I feel they just barely scratched the surface of what they can do, especially after more than 15 years of New Soup. This game is just a starting point, and there is still a lot of room for expansion. My dream is still for them to one day do a proper 2.5D Mario game in the style of modern Donkey Kong Country. Seriously, why did they not build off of the 3D World style in Mario Maker 2? But for now, this is still a very delightful game. You thought I was gonna say wonderful. Okay, after WarioWare Get It Together came out, I was not expecting them to make another one on the same system, let alone actually make it a proper sequel to Smooth Moves on the Wii like I originally wanted. So I might be slightly biased here. Oh my god! New WarioWare! Oh my god, it's actually Smooth Moves! But WarioWare Move It is very good. It's not called Smooth Moves 2, but you know, it's Smooth Moves 2. And like a sequel, it definitely adds onto the foundation that Smooth Moves established both in complexity and challenge. Instead of just one Wii Remote, you now move 2 Joy-Cons. And instead of doing things like holding the Wii Remote vertically, then horizontally, then in front of your face, the pose setups in Move It are definitely more complex, but also makes it even more fun to see all the scenarios the devs can come up with the same pose. Smooth Moves also prides itself in its chunky early Wii era presentation with crude 3D models, and I'm glad to see that style has made a successful transition to HD. There are some things that Smooth Moves does better than Move It, such as the simpler controls being more accessible for newcomers, having way more single-player minigame variety, and Tomorrow Hill, but as a sequel that builds on top and provides a new challenge for those who've mastered Smooth Moves, Move It definitely earns its place among the top-tier WarioWare games, and both games are absolutely worth playing. And now that within the span of 5 years we've gotten a best-of compilation of the handheld games, an original entry with unique mechanics, and a sequel to the motion-controlled entry, the next move for WarioWare is clearly a DIY sequel. Hire me, Intelligent Systems. These recent years have been a great time for my childhood games coming back, because here we have the Elephant Collection by John Cooney. And if you don't know John Cooney, you might know him better as JMTB02, the first employee and former CEO of Armor Games, and one of the earliest pioneers of Flash games. This is a remastered collection of a few of his Flash platformer games featuring the iconic blue elephant, with classics like Achievement Unlocked where you unlock all the achievements. This is the only level where you play only one level with absolutely no funny business going on, and Elephant Rave, baby! Just like the Shift series that I talked about last year, these are some simple but very fun games. It's the addictiveness and charm of old Flash games boiled down to its bare essence, and it's great to see part of this culture preserved after the death of Flash. Give them a try if you haven't already. Super Mario RPG, like Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, is one of the early Mario RPGs, in fact the very first one, that I've tried but never fully completed. But compared to Superstar Saga, I've definitely played the opening hours of this a lot more times, just never got around to finishing it on an emulator until this remake came around. And on that topic, the presentation of this remake is incredible and well worth the price tag. From the gorgeous but still faithful visuals to Yoko Shimomura's remastered soundtrack, this woman never misses. As for the actual game, it is the bare essential Mario RPG that laid the foundation for both Mario & Luigi and Paper Mario. But even in its first incarnation, this battle system is still pretty fun, and it's even substantially improved upon by the new combo system and the ability to swap characters mid-battle. The story, while being as basic as something like Paper Mario, still hosts a cast of wild and memorable characters that I'm glad to see are preserved in the original forms. Between this and the Thousand Year Door remake, I'm really hoping this is paving the way for a Mario RPG renaissance with new titles. I like this remake so much I somehow did the 100 jump challenge and got the super suit. These secrets indeed drove me insane. I've heard a lot of good praises for the Professor Layton games, but I've never actually sat down and played through a full entry myself. So why not kill two birds with one stone and also play the one Ace Attorney entry that I haven't played by going through Professor Layton vs Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. I don't see a lot of people discussing this crossover online, probably because it's still stuck on the 3DS. But this is simply another solid entry for both series, and it makes perfect sense for a crossover. I've only tried a handful of Layton puzzles in the past via briefly trying out the DS and 3DS games and demos and the like, and while I've sometimes heard that Layton puzzles can be cheap tricks at times, in this installment in particular, not a lot of them gave me trouble. There's a nice mix of decent brain teasers and puzzles with solutions you can fluke, and there's only really one or two puzzles where the solution was basically lol got 'em. It's definitely made me more interested in trying more Layton games in the future. And on the other side, the Ace Attorney stuff is still classic Ace Attorney. If you know, you know. With one of the new gimmicks being you have to take fantastical elements like magic into account now with the new setting. Some of its gameplay additions were also used for the equally excellent Great Ace Attorney games, which is cool to see. For a crossover like this, the two gameplay styles don't feel imbalanced, which is perfect. If you're a fan of either series but haven't checked this out yet, too bad, this game is legally unavailable and the English copies are heckin' expensive. Oh, whatever are we going to do? And lastly, rounding out the non-Nintendo systems I got this year, the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Well, this is a surprise. I mean, I'm not a big fighting game fan, so not a lot of general Neo Geo stuff appeals to me in particular. But look, this handheld's got the clicky stick! I gotta get the clicky stick! Which also gave me the perfect excuse to check out Sonic the Hedgehog Pocket Adventure instead of Sonic Superstars. Some people out there might say I made the correct choice, but I don't know, I'll probably get the Superstars eventually. After the classic Genesis games, 2D Sonic has had some wacky spin-off entries on 8-bit platforms, ranging from unique but inferior downgrades of the Genesis games, to decently received original titles like Triple Trouble and Sonic Blast. I imagine Sonic Pocket Adventure is the first one, however, that truly feels like the Genesis game squashed into a portable factor. And not just in gameplay physics, but also all the level set pieces and music lifted straight from those games. It's like if Sonic Generations was 2D only and focused on remembering Sonic 2. But hey, Sonic 2 was good, and this game keeps that classic 2D Sonic gameplay largely intact on a 1999 portable, which is very impressive. The internet is not wrong about the half-pipe special stages though. These are some of the hardest special stages in a Sonic game. Bring a video guide and pause often. And that's every game I beat in 2023. Once again, a solid mix of new releases, old classics, and the occasional obscure game. If any of the games I played last year piqued your interest or made you want to seek them out, let me know in the comments. Or tell me what other games you've played last year. This time around in 2024, I'm guessing I'll be cutting down more on the number of games I play as I try to put more time into videos. But on the other hand, maybe Nintendo will announce their next hardware this year along with a bonanza of new games and prove me wrong, who knows. In the meantime, I have some fun topics planned for the year and my New Year's resolution was to actually do them on schedule. So hopefully you enjoyed the videos that are out so far and look forward to more. Here's to an even better year for the channel, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.